welcome to the fourth video on our series on the effect of demand shocks on the economy. In this video, we're going to lay out the model that we're going to use to think about different demand shocks across different places in the economy, so different geographical areas can have effects on employment. The model is going to be the following. It's a bit different to the ones we've done before, because the first thing is, instead of a single agent in a single place, we're going to have a model with S equally sized counties. So we're going to have different places in this economy. And so we're going to use the index C for a given county. Then each county is going to produce two kinds of goods. Another difference with other models we've done. While in other models there is a single type of consumption good, here there's going to be tradable and non-tradable goods. Now, tradable goods can be traded between counties at some price PT. Notice that because you can trade across counties, the price of tradable goods does not depend on the county, and it is common across the whole economy. On the other hand, non-tradable goods must be consumed where they are produced, and so their price depends on the county. And this is what I meant by indexing. When you see the subindex C, means that this is the price of non-tradables in county C, as opposed to this price that has no index. So it is common to all Cs. It is common to all counties. We're going to assume that labor cannot move across counties, but can move freely between the two sectors. And so wages are going to be county specific. So each county is going to be its own labor market. And we're going to have a county wage for the tradable workers and a county wage for the non-tradable workers. Now, what about consumers? In each county, we're going to have a lot of consumers, or if you want, this is a mathematical term, this continuum of consumers, but it is the same as saying that we have one representative consumer. So what is this representative consumer going to do in each county? It's going to choose how much to consume of the tradable good and the non-tradable good. Because each county might be different, the amount consumed of tradables and non-tradables in each county is going to be different. And you can think of this like people in Toronto having a different demand for tradable and non-tradables than people in London. Okay, that's going to be the point. Now, consumers are going to take as given their nominal income. So that nominal demand is going to be DC. This index of demand is going to be the exogenous variable in this economy. Remember, the question here is about the effect of changes in demand on employment. And so what we're going to see is what happens if this D changes. So this demand is affected, among other things, by the wealth of the agent or, for example, the value of their housing. So what we were doing before with the data, where we were changing the price of houses and seeing what the effect of the price of houses had on employment, we're going to do in the model by linking a change in the household prices with a change in nominal demand. This DC is going to be an exogenous variable that changes. It is important, though, to note that it depends on C. It depends on the county. So while some counties might be heavily affected by the recession and their demand is going to go down a lot, some other counties need not be such affected as much, and so their demand is not going to go down as much. Now, consumers have a utility that's going to be Cobb-Douglas in non-tradable and tradable consumption. All right? The problem, it's going to be one that you've seen before. You want to maximize the utility that's coming from non-tradable and tradables, choosing the amount of non-tradable and tradables subject to your total demand. And so this is the nominal demand because we're having here the nominal expenditure in non-tradables plus the nominal expenditure in tradables. And notice, this depends on the county, this depends on the county, this and this as well. This one does not. This one does not depend on the county because you can trade it. Well, the first three conditions, I'm not going to spend too much time on them because we've already done these in our first set of videos on the math review. So you can interpret this, you can join it too mathematically, it's going to give you this expression that if you replace this expression back into your budget constraint, it's going to give you the answer, which is going to be that you want to spend a fraction alpha of your total demand in expenditures for non-tradables and the remaining fraction 1 minus alpha on expenditure for tradables. Okay, so you can do the steps here, but the bottom line is going to be a fraction alpha goes to non-tradables and a fraction 1 minus alpha goes to tradables. All right, what about labor supply? Well, consumers have no utility from labor, so they will work as much as they can, and they will work in whichever place pays them the most because they don't have any preference for whether they work in tradable or non-tradable. They just want to get paid. And so here is how labor supply is going to look. Labor supply, it's going to be perfectly inelastic. Look at what we're finding here. If the wage for tradables is lower than the wage for non-tradables, then the supply for tradable employment is going to be zero. Nobody wants to work in the tradable sector if it pays less than the non-tradable. If it pays more than the non-tradable, everybody wants to work in the tradable. But if they pay the same, then people are indifferent between working in the tradable or in the non-tradable sector. The same thing happens in the other sector. This is the other equation here. The supply for non-tradable is going to be zero if the wage is low. It's going to be everybody if the wage is high relative to the tradable sectors, and people are going to be indifferent in between. Now, because we know that there has to be employment in both sectors, it cannot be that one wage is different than the other, because then there will only be supply for the sector with the highest wage. And so from these we can conclude that the only equilibrium that can occur is one that satisfies the two wages being the same. This is a no arbitrage condition. Basically, if you can freely move between the two sectors, then the wages between the two sectors better be the same, because if not, one of the sectors will try to, or people will try to only work in one of the sectors. And so the only result here that can occur in equilibrium is that there is actually a single wage for every county. The wage does depend on the county though, but it doesn't depend on the sector. What about firms? Well, production technology is going to be linear, and so the amount produced in each sector is going to be proportional to the employment in that sector. Profits are going to be, of course, the revenue of the firm net of the wages, the revenue of the firm net of the wages, and we've already seen what happens when output is linear with respect to what the labor demand is going to be. Labor is going to be perfectly elastic. So this one here, supply of labor, is going to be perfectly inelastic. When you draw it, it's going to look like a vertical line. Here, labor is going to be perfectly elastic. So labor demand is going to look like a horizontal line. And it makes a lot of sense. If the wages are high relative to productivity, then you don't want to hire anybody. This is true in both sectors. If the wages are low relative to productivity, then you want to hire an infinite amount, but that's impossible because there is only one unit of each. Okay. What happens here if the wage is exactly equal to productivity? Then firms make zero profits and they are indifferent between any level of demand. And so we can conclude that the only equilibrium satisfies that the wage of the non-tradable sector has to be equal to A times the price in the non-tradable. This is going to be the nominal productivity. And the same thing has to happen in the tradable sector. Together with the conclusion of the previous slide, that the two wages have to be the same, we're going to get a result linking the prices of the two sectors. All right? Now, the final part is going to be to define an equilibrium. So an equilibrium given nominal demand. So look, I'm fixing here the level of nominal demand that's exogenous in all counties in the economy. Then an equilibrium is going to be values for consumption in each county labor allocations in this county between the tradable and the non-tradable sector, and prices in each county for the non-tradable sector, for non-tradable labor, so this is going to be the wage in non-tradable, the wage in tradable, and a common price of tradables, such that consumers maximize utility, and the outcome of them maximizing utility is going to be this proportion of demand allocated to expenditures in tradable and non-tradable sector. Firms maximize their profit, and markets have to clear. So the total consumption of tradables has to be equal to the total demand for tradables. And then for each county individually, non-tradables have to be consumed in the county, and all labor has to be used. Okay. With that, we've described all the different portions of the model. We've described what consumers do, how the labor market is going to work, how production is going to work, and then finally, we've defined the equilibrium of the economy. What we're going to do in the next video is see how we solve the model when we are in what we're going to call normal times. So we're not in a recession, and all the counties are going to look exactly the same. And then we're going to be using that as a benchmark to compare what's going to happen when we model a recession in this economy. So next video, we're going to solve the model.